Okay, thank you. Always when I hold a microphone, I'm tempted to sing, but I should not. My wife told me that I'm tone deaf. So that would be a bad experience for everyone involved. All right. Thank you, Nasipo, for giving me opportunity to speak here. And I've been tasked to give a very specific, or I've been given a title, right? So I'm supposed to talk about something relating the topic from postdoc to staff. So today I will not be talking about my research, which is in computational material science. I will be talking about my experiences and some advice about that part of one's career, where what I will be saying is not necessarily what I did, but maybe what one should do, which is a big difference. Afterwards, it's always easier to reflect. So I will just put this basically in 3 stages. What is it about being a postdoc? How do you get an academic job? And if you have one, how do you deal with the half of life? And my talk is a wee bit short. I'd also make a few comments about the postdoc system as such. Okay, so basically when you're graduating with your PhD, you have a couple of choices. And I think most or many already presented over the last few days. Of course, if you have the right mindset, you can become an entrepreneur, you can start your own company. That is, however, a path which should be well considered, as it requires a lot of skills you might not have gained at university. And you also have to have a very outgoing mindset for them, right? And a good idea, as we heard before. Of course, you can get also a real job. Most of our graduates actually work, so computational physics graduates work in banks or for insurances, some kind of data analysis, risk management, these kind of things, right? That's actually how we lose a lot of potential in South Africa, because lots of people need to earn money early on, right? And working for a bank or insurance is a very good way to get into this position that you can support a family. Something with what the traditional academic system, where you basically on precarious positions for at least a decade or so, does not provide. You can, of course, also go to industry. This is something I don't know how popular this is in South Africa and how much there is. So industry researchers, many companies actually do their own R&D in-house to the good of basically not being an academic, pay, having a job, and still doing something you actually graduated with, using your knowledge you actually gained. And what many students who don't go into real jobs do, at least in my experience, is they straight away try to get an academic position, a teaching position, which is understandable because it pays, but it's not necessarily the best way. Because what happens when you get a teaching position is you're doing teaching, right? That's your life. So you immediately lose competitiveness, right, in terms of research, because you're basically worrying mainly about that. And so the other alternative which there is if you want to become an academic eventually, or rather want to be academic now, in a way, you can do what's called a postdoctoral research fellow. So it's basically like a PhD without a thesis at the end, right? You're just spending your time on research, and you get paid to do that. So that is what I want to talk about today. Now, life of a postdoc is interesting. I would say it was the best part of my life. No, it's all good. It was great. So postdocs are great. Why are they great? They're because you can actually focus on your research, right? You have basically no other responsibilities except for other things you choose to do, and that gives you great focus. Also now, because you already are in academia for some time, you did your MSc, you did your PhD, you have experience, right? And as most people will realize as they go, for example, through a PhD process, you become more productive to the end. towards the end, right? It's because you're more experienced, right? Something which takes you half a year when you're freshly starting a project might take you only, you know what you actually do, right? So as a postdoc, you can make use of this. You can be extremely productive. WITS, for example, wants every postdoc to produce 2 publication units, not publishing units, right? That's a very different story. But this is something which is achievable, yeah, sometimes, but you have a very good starting point. Another great thing is you can go see other countries, other year, 2 years, something on this order of magnitude, right? You can just go for half a year, unless you have an N-body problem at home, and just, you know, experience a different culture, which is very nice to have for that experience. And of course, learn, right? Different universities. Even if you go to a university, go here to UJ, everything is benefits you from getting more. You have more, you have a broadened or widened mindset, right? And of course, you have the extra publications, but all this is good for you, right? As a human being and as an academic. Now, great, why aren't I still a postdoc, right? Because it's precarious. As I said, you only get your contracts for half a year, 2 years max, right? So, and most of these times, actually, you get no further benefits, right? You don't get pension. I'm sure that I don't know how to, right? And you have to have mobility, right? If you have what I like to call an N-body problem, wife and children, for example, or husband and children, or other family you need to take care of, right? Then this becomes immediately tricky. And maybe the most critical point, if you look internationally at least, post-career. It's an intermediate step. You have to get an academic position within a decade or so, else you're out. No one will give you postdoc position when you're 50, right? There's always younger material to have had, right? So you need to jump off the wagon after some time. But a postdoc is only really good training for academic positions. If you want to go to industry, if you want to become a data analyst at the bank eventually, they don't care postdocs, right? Them, you're just now older. Older means you're A, more expensive, right, to hire in the first place, and B, you have a stronger settled character. And what companies want for junior positions is they want to have people which are malleable, where you can influence them because they want you to do the job they think is right. Although they hire people from industry, from university, because when you have they still insist that you do it their way. So, you know, the rule of thumb. You know, the older you get, the less likely you get a junior position in industry, right? And your system skills which are relevant to industry, they won't hire position. You really need to have, if you go that way, you need to fairly quickly then find it fairly quickly within a decade or so, find an academic position. Okay. Now, assuming you actually decided you want to do this, maybe travel the world for a few years and earn some money. A friend of mine, he did a postdoc in Japan, and he saved so much money from it, he could buy a house here, cash. So, you know, it's not always bad, right? Do a postdoc in a well-paying country and then move to a country with loss and you're settled, right? Good strategy anyway for retirement. I know where I retired. Okay. Okay, now you're at the next step. Okay, you've been postdoc for a few years, and now you're thinking about, okay, what can I do to get an academic position? So you have to first keep in mind what actually the checklist is for the HR department, right? So there are a few things you need to have. You need to have a strong publication record, right? That's, after all, your main job as a postdoc, so that shouldn't be a problem. your research needs to be independent. Okay, let's see in a second what that might mean. But when you apply for a first academic position, you're not going to apply for a professorship most likely. So you're going to apply for a lecturer position, which implies that you are supposed to teach a lot, which implies that they want people with experience, right? So they might want to have this. Also, the thing always important and if possible supervision record. Okay, so that's basically the checklist. But more importantly, in summary, is okay, there are minimum requirements always there. And you basically need to be good at those to get onto the A list, the short list, right? But to get the job, you need to have something which sets you apart from the rest. Something, right? You need to have some strength, something which shows the committee that they want to hire you and not any of the other 5 people with exactly the same record. Right? So that's something to keep in mind. You need to have something which takes them. Okay, so let's go through the points one by one. Publications. Okay, publishing a lot is a way, but that's maybe not the most important one. These days, H-index, aka how often or number of citations, the way of measuring how many citations you get is important. Basically, you have to have some kind of traction. Just not publish rubbish. You need to publish for impact. That's what they say at WITS. You know, someone needs to read your paper. Someone needs to care, right? Now we can argue whether or not number of citations is actually relevant, but that is unfortunately what HR is looking. Okay. Point. Independent research. Okay, so one advantage of being a postdoc is that if you do like half a year in like, you know, maybe 3-4 different postdocs in different countries, each for half a year or a year, you work with many different people, right? And this will help you on later on a lot. Having a strong network of collaborators is one of the most, as you're not going to be the one anymore doing all the work. You can't, right? You have to have collaborators you work with. You have to have students you work with. Those do, you know, parts of the work, and you get a paper and you wrote your paragraph and it, right? If you write the whole paper by yourself, you're stuck in an early career, right? If you didn't even see the paper before publication, you're a senior professor. I'm overstating the point. Well, some people do it like this, but it's not really cool. Okay. But very importantly now, for example, I worked with Professor Quandt, right? Now, if I want to have a job here at the same university as Professor Quandt, because it's so cool, and then they would ask, okay, but why would we hire you? We already have, right? What do you bring what he doesn't bring, right? If I do exactly just the same thing he always does, there's no reason to hire me as well, right? So find something slightly different direction to go, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Maybe 5 degrees different, it's fine. Okay. Usually, Postdoc doesn't require you to teach, but doesn't mean you can't, right? Depending on the university rules, but volunteer. So when I was a postdoc at WITS, you know, sometimes someone is sick, someone is different. I'm like, oh, happy, yeah, I can do this lecture for you, right? That is good for your CV and it shows commitment, right? You are eager to take over responsibility and so on. So that can be don't overdo it though, because in the end, the most important part is that you're doing your research, right? Okay. So for postdocs, funding can be a bit tricky. There are a few small things necessarily apply to you. Perfectly got through a gold mine, really. So I was happy, and I'm a computational physicist. I don't need much money, right? I need my laptop. I get once, and then I just, you know. But there are small things. So most grants are not available to postdocs because you're not a permanent staff member. There are here and there small things you can apply for, and just go for it, right? I'm a very lazy person. I don't do this as much as I should. but it's really helpful, right? If you can say like, oh, I got this, even if it's like small money. Oh, I got like 10,000 rand here and 50,000 rand here. You know, everything you can put in your CV helps. As a postdoc also, you can't be a main supervisor to a student in all universities I'm aware of, but you can always mentor, right? And that's actually one of the most important roles of the postdoc in a research group actually anyway, right? Professors don't have time, right? As a general rule. PhD students and MSc students need a lot of attention. So who's supposed to have most contact with these students? It's the postdoc, right? The person with enough experience to give something further. And this is basically what you can do as a postdoc as well. So if you have a postdoc in the group, make sure you talk to them on a regular basis. And if you are a postdoc, this is how you can gain some accolades by engaging with students. You can put this in your CV. Some universities allow to co-supervise officially. But even if you mentoring, you can put this in your CV. That is no problem whatsoever. And as I said, the most important part, assuming now you have like 120 applicants, and of those 120 applicants made it to the top 5, right? Now you have to distinguish yourself, right? Something you're doing much better, or something which distinguishes you from the rest. And there are different avenues, right? You can be active in the community. You can organize workshops, conferences, journal clubs, very popular. Outreach, very popular too, right? You can do this. It helps. It's a big plus point. Be a pleasant and available presence in your department, right? Not only, most likely, if you apply, for example, at WITS for a position, people from your department are in the committee, right? They need to like you. If they don't like you, they will not give you the job. But furthermore, when you apply for positions, you will need references. Depending on, or even like for funding, NRF funding, you need like what, 6 reference letters at the least, right? Now try to find 6 people, all of whom have something substantially to say and something substantive to say about you. That's not easy, right? I often get like an honor student saying like, oh, can you write me a ref letter? And I'm like, what? You sat in my class. Okay, class was 72%. You never said anything. You never consulted. You never showed interest in anything to tell. What am I supposed to write? Do you really want me to write you a reference letter? I don't have anything I can. I don't know you personally. I don't know your hobby. Well, maybe you're active in the church choir. I don't know. As a mark for those who are still looking for maybe PhD bursary. If you want to have a Rhodes Scholarship or what's the American one again? Fulbright Scholarship, right? That's what they're looking for. Everyone who applies is academically excellent. My wife gets one of those every year, not she herself, but her students. What you do to get those? Extra activities, showing them positive on the community. That's what these funders are looking for more than anything. Okay. All right. Now, last part. You are now a lecturer, right? You made the transition. So what do you have to expect? Because that's actually maybe the hardest. You don't have any time for research, and wow, you have much less time for research, right? Maybe 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week, depends. Okay. Depending on the situation, you also now have to attract funding, right? For students, for travel, for build your own research group, at least eventually, right? So that can be tricky, right? So yeah, so basically this is a repetition of points, isn't it? Okay, but a result of all these is that I checked. You can do this on Google Scholar, right? You put in names. And then what you see, for example, you put in a colleague, it's like, oh, this colleague has like so many citations and so many publications that they're very good. You look at it, they're all from the postdocs. Like, oh, they've been working, oh, did a postdoc in the US, and then they came to BITS like 10 years ago, and then the publication went down, right? Because they weren't prepared for the transition, right? They had a network there. They had access to equipment, they had access to funding as a postdoc in a very good group, right? Publishing with very good people. Now they sit all here by themselves alone, right? Don't do that mistake. If you make this transition, have a plan, right? Work with people you know a lot of people. Make sure you have access to equipment because you can everything yourself, right? And so on and so on. If there is existing structures, attach yourself to Nosipo, for example, right? Very good idea. Yes, money and guide, right? You can't build, if everyone builds their own lab, we have, nothing goes anywhere, right? We share resources, right? We have students, we have co-supervision, we get access to things like this. And this is why, for example, chairs are very important part of the university because they bring in the resources to actually jumpstart, especially young academics, as you know you're trying to do. Get a mentor, right? Get someone in your department who's been in the system, who knows, oh, how do I submit exam papers? How does Ulvasi work on this end of the line? Whatever, right? All small things, try to get organized, get a mentor. And more importantly, you know that you will have at some point less access to resources than you had before, be it time, be it students, be it equipment. Make a plan, find a niche, right? For example, we know that we have, in terms of computational capacity, less than a tenth of what we would have overseas, right? Okay. Well, we don't do then the main, whatever they're doing in Europe, right, with 1,000 cores machines. Well, we don't do that. We can't do that, right? We have 100. So we do other projects, right, which are, takes a little bit more thinking, but you can find those. That is not a problem. Okay, and last slide. Because when I did the test run, I only went to 10 minutes, so I thought I should add a little bit of more thoughts. So one thing which I find peculiar in South Africa is that most PhD students I've been working with, they do not want to do a postdoc. They just outright refuse. So either I go work for a bank or I get a lecturer position. These are the two choices they usually insist are open for them. But this is bad because if you hire a lecturer right away from school, they have very limited experience, and there's something which is called academic instinct. Basically, if you are basically Nosipo student, right? You're doing masters with her, you're doing PhD with her, and then you get a lecturer position at chemistry. All you know, all you can do is what Nosipo can do, and less, right? Because you have the more experience. So what's the benefit to the university? No benefit, right? Now, what if we say, oh, we have this very bright young student, right? And we want to keep the student because, we need to get new blood in, but we want also people with experience. We want to have people with a broad mind. What would we say if we said, okay, we'll hire you as a lecturer 2 years from now. We promise you this position. And we send you on a postdoc for these 2 years. 3-4 different places around the world. You gain experience. We get a lecturer with much more experience. Does it cost extra money? Yes. Is it worth the investment? I think it is. So that's maybe something to treat postdocs like students, which I think is vastly unfair because if you reach that point, you're not a student anymore. You're actually an academic. This is fairly good. You got to get a staff card. So that's already a start. But you don't get any access to any of the benefits. You can't do any of the staff development courses, for example. Why not? Right? Allow your postdocs or convince management to allow the postdocs staff development programs. It will benefit everyone in the long, right? And I think one problem, my last point, which I also see for postgrad students. The future of a postgrad student depends largely on the capacity of the host or supervisor. In terms of, can this host or supervisor integrate you into the community? Can this person integrate you into their research network? Do they have a research network to start with, which is not always even clear? And of course, funding-wise, right? I take a student, it's my job to fund our conference travels, right? But I might not have actually all that money. I might be a very good supervisor, and I might have lots to teach, but I might not have money. I might not actually be able to attract money for whatever reason, right? So maybe it would be fairer to the students and postdocs if these things wouldn't be quite so dependent on the abilities and capabilities of the host or supervisor, right? I think this is unfairly disadvantaging actually students. Just, you know, I suck at getting funding doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to go to conferences, right? I find this is a bit of a weird thing we do here. Anyway, this is all I wanted to say today, and thank you for your attention.